Now, my 70s interview guest this week is Damian O'Neill from the Undertones. And this year sees the group celebrating 35 years since they released their debut single, Teenage Kicks. And Damian talked about the history of the group, also how they came to reform, and proving that all bands have to start somewhere. They made their first recordings in a venue that used to be a stable, and we can be thankful that a certain Mrs. Sims allowed this bunch of scruffy Derryites to use her shed. Otherwise, we would never have heard this, Casbah Rock. That was a little bit of Casbah Rock from the Undertones, and with me is Damian from the band. So tell us a little bit about the O'Neill family. You're the youngest of three boys?
Three boys. I've got a younger sister actually as well, so I'm the second youngest in the family. My eldest brother Jim was kind of into folk music, so he was the first one to actually have a guitar in the house. Being a few years older as well, he was kind of into Cat Stevens, and so he was playing sort of folk stuff. And because he had a gut string guitar, nylon string guitar lying around the house, he would occasionally show us the odd chord or two to John, Vincent or me or whatever. And we sort of got fascinated by this instrument. So that's why we kind of wanted to learn to play, pick it up and strum it, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was kind of a natural follow-on from my brother, really.
So John and Vincent were in the Undertones.
They were in the Undertones originally.
They were called the Hot Rods at one point?
Originally, the Hot Rods, there's a few names.
Then I think you came up with Little Feet.
Little Feet. I think
maybe there might be another band.
And before we called ourselves the Rolling Stones, we decided to call ourselves the Undertones. Yeah. I think it was Billy who came up with the name in a history book. He's seen the word undertone. I said, oh, that sounds like a good name. And we all loved it, actually, because it kind of sounded like a sort of show band, an Irish show band or something. It kind of suited us, so we liked it right away.
Yeah, no, it is a great name. Talking about Irish show bands, I mean, that's the way things were in Ireland, really. You formed a band and what you did was cover versions, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the main. That's what most bands in Ireland, actually, they made a good living, actually, and these are all top-notch musicians as well. They'd probably have their day jobs, and at night they'd be in a show band. Always the cover, usually whatever was in the top 30 at the time, like really good versions. Ireland's got a history of show bands, and some of these bands were huge, like only huge in Ireland alone, or maybe travelled to Britain for a while, for England, whatever, for a few shows and came back again. But yeah, we wanted to follow our heroes like them, Van Morrison's Them. We kind of looked to sort of 60s bands like that as we could do something like a kind of garagey, raw R&B kind of stuff.
So you got two brothers in the band, but you're not in it. So you're the little whippersnapper who's getting a bit jealous and secretly practicing on guitar. Were you?
Yeah, you see, I was the first. Actually, I was 14. I started learning to play properly, and then I actually had to basically I went and bought a second-hand electric guitar and an amplifier for like £20 or something, and meanwhile the others were still learning on acoustic guitars and bongos, so they're just a little bit jealous that I was electrified and they weren't. So eventually the reason why I got into the Undertones was basically my brother Vincent kind of decided to leave to study for his O-levels, or so they say anyway, or my mum tells me that story anyway, so he sort of left the band, and I sort of found my way in that way. They didn't really want me in, or I know Mickey Bradley didn't, because Vincent was his best friend, you see. So he was kind of the little brother taking over. It didn't go down too well with him.
Let's do another song. This is one I love. It's called I Gotta Get Her.
Jackie Taylor says that she's never at home, 'cause when she's in, she knows she's never alone. There'll always be somebody who's just hanging around, waiting for a chance to start putting it down. Next time we'll have to do better. I gotta get her.
The Undertones and I Gotta Get Her, and Damian O'Neill is with us here on Radio 2. So, the beginning of the Undertones getting into their new sound, as it were. So, I guess you were listening to the likes of the Ramones and bands like that, were you?
Well, before that, you know, we were playing kind of R&B stuff, like early Rolling Stones and Them, like I said. And then by late 76, we heard tracks like from punk bands like The Damned, New Rose. Also, of course, we had Eddie and the Hot Rods, Dr. Feelgood before that. So, you know, it was a kind of natural progression to punk. And then, of course, the big seminal moment was when we heard the Ramones LP. I think Mickey Bradley got it. And that changed everything. It was like, wow. It was just a seminal moment. We can do this. It was infectious, the great hooks, great short songs. And you didn't need to know a lot of chords to play it, you know. So it suited us really well because we, you know, at the time we weren't great musicians, but it was just the energy of it we loved. Yeah,
the energy was great, and it was really started, I think, by Dr. Feelgood and Wilco Johnson. You know, just playing that fast with that much energy.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, again, I always remember watching them on Supersonic and all these TV programs, and seeing especially how strange Wilco looked, how great he looked in the suit and that wide stare, you know, and that guitar like a machine gun. So it made quite an impression on us.
Then there was the Undertones EP with a certain well-known song on it. Had you joined Sire by this time or not?
We put Teenage Kicks EP out on Good Vibrations, which was a Belfast independent label. And just before we recorded that, actually, we were more or less giving up because we kept breaking up due to various reasons, and we were getting frustrated because we'd been playing the Casbah, this place in Derry, for good 2 years now. We had a good repertoire of songs, but we were getting nowhere because, you know, we were just playing Derry and nowhere else. So we got this chance to make this record, and for us it was our last test. It was a testament, you know, that we actually existed, you know.
Where'd you get the money from to pay the studio?
Well, it was Terry Hooley from the label paid for the expenses. I mean, I don't know how much it cost. It probably wasn't too much, but he kindly put the record out for us. So he paid for the studio. I think it was two days in the studio. And we did 4 songs because we made it an EP because we wanted to give value for money. And we weren't even going to originally put Teenage Kicks on the EP, believe it or not, because we didn't really, some of us didn't think it was that good. It's hard to believe, but
who wrote it?
John, my brother John wrote it. And, you know, it was kind of crazy if you think about it. We nearly didn't put it on. But anyway, something was magic in the air that day when we recorded all 4 songs, but especially for Teenage Kick, because it still sounds, it's still got that. I mean, it's a great song, but it's the sound of it, all done on cheap guitars and with a really good studio engineer.
And whose idea was to send it to John Peel?
Well, I think it was Billy, basically our drummer. Billy had been in touch with John before on the phone. He used to phone him when he was on air, etc. And he kind of knew we existed. So I think it was Billy, and I think Terry Hooley has also apparently went over to London to present it to him. So I remember the very night we knew he was going to play it.
How did you know?
Well, I think we got word from John Peel that he was going to play. I think so. I could be wrong in this. Maybe we just listened and hoping. We were all gathered around the little transistor, and he played, of course, and then he said something famously like, "That was so good, I'm going to play it again."
And which is very rare.
I don't think he's ever done that before. But you can imagine our house, the mayhem, and the phone started ringing, and it was just one of the greatest moments ever.
She was mad, she looked so good. I wanna through the night.
The Undertones and the one and only Teenage Kicks, and Damian O'Neill is here on Sounds of the 70s. So then everything started to kick off. Then it's all Top of the Pops and everything else like that.
Yeah, we got signed a deal with Sire. They re-released Teenage Kicks. It got to number 30 or 31 in the charts, and we did Top the Pops for that. And that was a great moment, you know, because we always wanted to do Top the Pops. I know a lot of punk bands didn't really care about it, but we did. It was just something you always watched every Thursday, you know. So being on Top the Pops was kind of like a vindication of all the pain we went through being early days, and, you know, getting aggro in the streets for being a punk band and all that. So it was brilliant. It was a great moment.
You must have had to pinch yourself when you were there.
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, it was Tony Blackburn, I think, was introducing it and stuff, and it was a funny, surreal, just very surreal moment. And unfortunately, it didn't do us any good because the record dropped, I think, the following week.
It's not supposed to do that,
no,
is it?
it's supposed to go up. And that was it. I think we thought our career was over. But fortunately, then, we were able to get on again. I think it was Jimmy when we recorded the LP then in 1979.
Seymour Stein, an American guy who started this record label. Blondie were famously on it, and Talking Heads, and some really great acts.
That's why we signed to Sire, because we love those bands.
There's this huge connection between Ireland and America. I mean, it's the next place you come to, isn't it?
It is. And we always had a fascination with American bands, from Phil Spector's Wall of Sounds and Shirelles, etc., and Doo-Wop and Brill Building and all that. Plus then the punk thing, you know, Television, Ramones, Blondie.
What was it like arriving? You flew to New York?
We flew to New York first time in 1979. We actually supported The Clash for 2 weeks in East Coast, doing the East Coast tour when they were just premiering their London Calling songs. It's just before that album came out. So you imagine that, just going to America alone is brilliant, but getting to support the mighty Clash was amazing.
Yeah, how did you get on?
Oh, we were really shy, very kind of insular band. We didn't really like to mix too. You know, they did their own thing, we did our thing, and they were on a big tour bus, and we were on a tiny Chevrolet, whatever, driving us around, you know, for hours and hours. So we were slowly getting to meet them, getting to know them actually by the second week, and unfortunately, but we were just starting to become friends, and we had to leg it back home because we only did 2-week tour. You know, I think some of the band didn't want to do the full tour because they wanted to get back to their girlfriends.
And then to bring it to the present day, the Undertones broke up. But then you decided, let's get together again.
1999, we decided to reform again, only for 2 shows for this multimedia building, which has been opened up in Derry. They asked us to perform. Normally in the past, you know, we've been asked before. Me and John always think it was a bad idea, you know. But I think when you get a bit older, you do mellow out. We kind of knew it was right to do, but to be honest, we didn't even ask Fergal because we kind of knew Fergal wouldn't be interested. We just knew he wouldn't. So we decided to get somebody else, and we auditioned this singer called Paul McClune, who used to be in a band of the drummers after the Undertones. So we knew he could sing, and he was just perfect because not only could he sing, well, he didn't sing exactly like Fergal, but he was a great singer, great frontman, and he had the Derry accent as well, which really helps. I don't think it would have worked if he was American or from London, you know.
Yeah. So you're really enjoying doing gigs now?
Yeah, it's still great. You know, that was 1999, and here we are still after supposedly just 2 shows. We've been around the world again. We're constantly doing shows, and just, you know, it's not a full-time career. What's good now, there's no pressure. You know, there's no record company saying you got to do this, you got to do that. We just do it when we can, and we have enjoyment, see a bit of the world, whatever, and then we stop, and everybody's usually back to their day jobs or whatever. You know, so it's great.
Yeah. I mean, do you have a day job?
Actually, I don't. Neither does John, but then he wrote his kicks, so he's doing okay.
Yeah, he'll be all right for the rest of his life.
Then hopefully he'll always remember me when I'm down and out.
I'm sure he will. Damian, lovely to meet you.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
Very small, he did what
The Undertones and Jimmy, such great energy they had. And that concludes our chat with my 70s guest this week on Sounds of the 70s, Damian O'Neill. And by the way, there's an introduction to the Undertones. It's out now as a CD-DVD package. Features greatest hits, live performances, and a special 2-hour documentary on the band. And the Undertones also will be performing at some UK festivals throughout August. You can find out more by going to theundertones.com.